The thing about being invisible is that you see everything. I learned that crawling through ventilation shafts for 15 years, watching the world through ceiling grills while rich people forgot I existed. But tonight, standing in the grand ballroom of the Celestial Hotel in my JCPenney suit that smelled faintly of mothballs and desperation, I wasn't invisible enough. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The air conditioning was running at 68 degrees. I knew because I'd installed the new compressor unit myself 3 days ago, lying on my back in a 110-degree mechanical room while some assistant manager complained about the noise. Now that same AC was pumping Arctic air over 200 people in evening wear, and nobody gave a damn about the noise or the man who made their comfort possible. Elias. My wife's voice cut through the chamber orchestra's rendition of something classical and expensive. Audrey stood beside me, looking like she'd stepped out of a magazine I couldn't afford. Black dress, pearls, hair pulled back so tight it probably hurt. She smelled like Chanel and ambition. "Don't embarrass me tonight," she said, not looking at me. Her eyes tracked the room like a predator. "This is important." "I'm just standing here, Audrey." "Exactly." She turned finally, and I saw something in her face I'd been seeing more and more lately. Shame. "Just try to look like you belong, okay? Smile. Network. This gala matters. The Pinnacle Corporation's annual charity gala." Audrey had been talking about nothing else for 6 weeks. She'd made junior executive 3 months ago, and this was her first time at the big kids' table. Literally. "I fixed the AC in this building," I said. "Does that count as belonging?" "Jesus, Eli." She glanced around, paranoid. "Don't tell people that." Before I could respond, some silver-haired VP glided past, and Audrey's face transformed into this bright fake smile I didn't recognize. They air-kissed. They laughed about something that wasn't funny. The VP moved on, and Audrey's smile like someone had flipped a switch. "Come on," she said. "Let's find our seats." I followed her through the crowd, past tables draped in white linen, past ice sculptures sweating under the lights, past people who looked at my Walmart shoes and looked away. The ballroom was massive, all crystal chandeliers and marble floors, the kind of place that charged $5,000 just to rent it. The kind of place where guys like me usually entered through the service entrance. Audrey stopped at a table near the back corner. Table 49, according to the little gold number on a stick, next to the kitchen doors. I could hear the clatter of dishes, the bark of the head chef, the industrial dishwasher grinding through its cycle. The kitchen doors had round windows, and every time they swung open, hot air and noise rolled out like a wave. "Here you are," Audrey said brightly. I looked at the table, then at her. "You're sitting here?" "Oh." She touched her collarbone, a gesture she'd picked up from someone with actual money. "No, I'm at table 1, with the executive team, but you'll be fine here. Great people at this table." She gestured vaguely at the empty chairs. The name cards read like a clearance sale: Jim from accounting, Margaret from HR, Tom from facilities, and 5 other people who clearly weren't important enough for the front of the room. "The head table," I said slowly. "It's a work thing, baby. You understand." She was already backing away, already scanning the room for someone more important. "I'll check on you later." She didn't check on me later. I watched her glide toward table 1, right up front by the stage. The table with the CEO, the CFO, the senior VPs, and there, pulling out her chair with a smile that made my stomach turn, was Sterling Webb. Sterling Webb, VP of Operations, 38 years old, Harvard MBA, silk ties that cost more than my truck payment. The guy who called me chief and buddy when he needed his office thermostat adjusted. The guy who had my wife's calendar memorized better than I did. I watched him push in Audrey's chair, watched his hand linger on her lower back, just above the curve of her hip, watched her lean into it, natural as breathing. The kitchen doors banged open behind me. A waiter rushed past with a tray of something that smelled like truffle oil and privilege. I sat down at table 49 and didn't touch the wine. Tom from facilities showed up 20 minutes later, already half drunk, and spent the entire salad course complaining about union politics. Margaret from HR never showed. The rest of the table consisted of people who introduced themselves once and then formed their own conversation bubble, carefully excluding me with the precision of people who'd been excluded themselves. I had a perfect view of table 1. Sterling leaned close to Audrey, whispering something. She laughed, touching his arm. The CEO made a toast, and everyone raised their glasses. Sterling's hand disappeared under the table. Audrey's smile never wavered. I stood up. Nobody at table 49 noticed. Tom from facilities was 3 stories deep into some bathroom renovation disaster. I walked past the kitchen doors, through the service corridor that smelled like steam and lemon industrial cleaner, and out the back exit where the catering trucks idled. The night air hit me like a hammer. August in the city, 95 degrees at 10 p.m., the kind of heat that made pavement shimmer and tempers short. The heat wave had been going for 6 days straight, and the meteorologists were calling it historic. I called it job security. I loosened my tie and pulled out my phone. 3 missed calls already. All Audrey. A taxi idled near the loading dock, driver half asleep. I rapped on the window. "You busy?" "Where to?" "Far from here." I gave him my address in Parkside, the neighborhood where the houses were small and the driveways cracked and nobody pretended to be anything they weren't. The driver merged into traffic, and I watched the Celestial Hotel shrink in the rearview mirror, all lit up like a birthday cake. My phone buzzed. Then again. Then it started ringing nonstop. By the time I got home, I had 9 missed calls and 6 voicemails. I cracked a beer from the fridge, sat on the couch still wearing my suit, and hit play on speakerphone. The first 2 were Audrey hissing, "Where are you? Call me back. Now." The third was more frantic. "Eli, this isn't funny. People are asking about you." The fourth made my jaw tight. "You're being so selfish right now. This night was important to me." The fifth was the CEO's voice in the background, loud and jovial. "Where's the other half of the Vance power couple? Let's get the supportive husband up here for a toast." Then Audrey's voice, shrill with panic. "Just answer. Jesus Christ, Eli, you're ruining everything. Get back here." I listened to all 6 messages. Then I typed out a text. "I'm at table 49. Oh wait, no I'm not." I hit send, turned off my phone, and locked the. The beer was cold, the house was quiet, the couch was comfortable. For the first time in 6 months, I slept like a baby. I woke up to the sound of hell arriving. My phone, which I'd turned back on at 6 a.m. out of morbid curiosity, had 37 missed calls and 23 text messages. I didn't read them. I showered, pulled on my work clothes, the real uniform, cargo pants, and a Vance cooling polo shirt with my name stitched over the pocket, and walked outside into an oven. The heat wave had escalated overnight. The weather app on my phone showed 103 degrees at 7 a.m. with a heat advisory warning people to stay indoors. The sun sat on the horizon like a burning coin, and the air had that thick, syrupy quality that made breathing feel like work. The grass in my yard had gone from green to khaki, and Mrs. Patterson's roses next door looked like crime scene photos. My service van sat in the driveway, white with blue lettering, Vance Cooling and HVAC. Commercial and residential. 24/7 emergency service. The van was 12 years old, 200,000 miles, but the engine purred like a kitten because I actually maintained my equipment. Unlike some people. I loaded my toolbox, my pressure gauges, my refrigerant canisters. Then I sat in the driver's seat and stared at the house I'd been paying the mortgage on for 8 years. Audrey's car wasn't in the driveway. She hadn't come home. I started the engine and drove to the Pinnacle Tower downtown. The Pinnacle Corporation building was 37 stories of steel and glass, the kind of structure that looked like someone had Xeroxed an architecture magazine and said, "Build this." I had the HVAC maintenance contract for the whole building, a sweet deal I'd landed 4 years ago that paid well and kept me busy. I knew every mechanical room, every air handler, every chiller unit in that building better than I knew my own garage. I also knew where the access panels were, the ones that led to the ventilation system, the ones that let a guy my size crawl through the ductwork and hear everything happening in every office. I parked in the service bay and nodded at Eddie, the security guard who'd been there longer than the building itself. "Hot one, Eli," Eddie said, mopping his forehead. "It's going to get hotter," I said. I took the service elevator down to sub-level 2, where the mechanical heart of the building lived. The boiler room, the chiller plant, the electrical panels that fed power to 300 offices full of people who thought electricity came from God. It was loud down here, all humming motors and rushing water and the bass note rumble of industrial equipment. It was also about 90 degrees, even with the ventilation running. I loved it. I checked the main chiller board first, made a show of inspecting the gauges and writing notes on my clipboard. Then I grabbed my tool bag and my inspection camera, a little fiber optic number that I used to check inside ducts without tearing them open, and headed for the access ladder that led into the ventilation system. The ducts were 3 feet square, big enough to crawl through on hands and knees. I'd done it 100 times, usually to replace dampers or check for mold. Today, I had a different purpose. Sterling Webb's office was on the 23rd floor, corner unit, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the river. I'd been up there a dozen times to adjust his thermostat because he was always too hot or too cold, never comfortable. The man had never done a day of physical labor in his life, and his body didn't know how to regulate temperature. I crawled through the ducts, following the map I'd memorized years ago. The metal was warm under my hands, and I could hear the building waking up around me, phones ringing, people talking, keyboards clacking. I passed over the 18th floor conference room where someone was already yelling about quarterly projections. I passed over the 21st floor break room where 2 women were discussing a reality TV show I'd never heard of. Then I reached the grill above Sterling's office and stopped. Voices. 2 of them. I positioned my inspection camera against the grill slats and peered down into the office below. Sterling was sitting on the edge of his desk, tie loosened, looking like he'd slept in his clothes. Audrey sat in the leather chair across from him, still wearing last night's gala dress. "Disaster," Sterling was saying. "The CEO kept asking about him. I had to make excuses." "He just left," Audrey said. Her voice sounded raw. "Middle of dinner, didn't say a word. I've called him 50 times. Where do you think he went?" "Home, probably. Being passive-aggressive." Sterling laughed, sharp. "Passive-aggressive, that's generous. My father-in-law was furious, Audrey. He thinks your husband disrespected the company." "He's not usually like this." "No?" Sterling stood, walked to the window. "He's always like this. Blue-collar inferiority complex. You said it yourself." Silence. I watched Audrey through the camera, watched her face do something complicated. "I shouldn't have said that," she said quietly. "It's true, though." Sterling turned back to her. "You're executive material. He fixes air conditioners. At some point you have to ask yourself if you've outgrown him." I waited for her to defend me, to say something, anything, that indicated 8 years of marriage meant more than a promotion and a corner office view. Instead, she said, "The apartment's working out." My hand tightened on the camera. "Good," Sterling said. "I transferred another $2,000 into the account. Should cover this month." "You're sure the transactions are clean?" "Audrey, relax. It's routed through 3 different subsidiary accounts. My father-in-law's accounting team couldn't find it with a map and a flashlight. As far as anyone knows, that money's going toward a marketing consultant." She laughed. Actually laughed. "A marketing consultant named Audrey Vance." Exactly. I watched them smile at each other, watched Sterling walk over and cup her face, tilting it up, watched my wife of 8 years close her eyes and lean into his touch like it was the most natural thing in the world. I backed away from the grill, carefully, keeping my breathing steady. I crawled back through the ducts to sub-level 2, descended the ladder, and walked to the main control panel for the building's HVAC system. The panel was 6 feet wide, covered in switches and digital readouts and color-coded wire bundles. To most people, it looked like mission control. To me, it was a piano. I found the zone controller for the 23rd floor and pulled up the thermostat override menu. Sterling's office thermostat was currently set to 72 degrees. I changed it to 85. Then I disabled his ability to adjust it locally. Then, because I'm thorough, I adjusted the damper flow to his office so that the air coming through his vents was being pulled directly from the south-facing mechanical room, the one that sat under 300 square feet of black roofing material, baking in 105-degree heat. By noon, his office would be a sauna. I logged out of the system, grabbed my clipboard, and headed for the elevator. Sterling caught me on the 23rd floor, stepping out of the elevator just as I was heading toward the stairwell. "Hey!" he said. "You!" I turned. Sterling looked worse up close. Sweat stains under his arms, hair disheveled, the kind of exhaustion that came from staying up all night for the wrong reasons. "Morning," I said. "My office is an oven. Fix it." "Sure thing. What's the problem?" "It's 90 degrees in there. That's the problem." I made a show of pulling out my tablet, checking the system logs. Shows 72 on my end. "Well, your system is wrong. It's burning up." "Could be the thermostat sensor," I said. "Or maybe the damper's stuck. I'll take a look." "When?" "I've got 3 emergency calls ahead of you. This heats systems all over the building, probably late afternoon." Sterling stepped closer. He had 3 inches on me, but I had 40 pounds of muscle from lifting compressor units and hauling sheet metal. He tried to loom. It didn't work. "Listen, Chief," he said. "I don't think you understand. I need my office fixed now, not late afternoon, now." "And I don't think you understand," I said, keeping my voice level. "I'm the only HVAC tech in this building. I've got 17 calls in my queue, and the temperature outside is 106 degrees. Your office is hot. So is everyone else's. You want it fixed faster, you can call another company and wait 3 weeks for them to show up." His jaw clenched. "You work for me." "Actually, I work for Pinnacle Corporation. You're just a tenant." "I'm a VP." "Congratulations." I started to walk past him. He grabbed my shoulder. I stopped, looked down at his hand, then up at his face. "You really want to do this?" I asked quietly. Something in my voice must have registered because he let go, but he didn't back down. "Fix my office," he said. "Today." "Parts are on back order," I lied. "National shortage because of the heat wave. Could be a week, maybe 2, or..." I let the word hang there. "Or what?" "You could open a window?" I walked away before he could respond, took the stairwell down 3 floors, and stopped to catch my breath. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from the effort of not putting Sterling's face through the drywall. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recorder app. I'd installed a small wireless transmitter in the ductwork above Sterling's office, paired to my phone. It had been recording the entire conversation between him and Audrey. I listened to it twice, the embezzlement, the apartment, the casual way they discussed erasing me from Audrey's life. Then I opened my email and started typing to anonymous.ethics@pinnaclecois.com. Subject: Financial Irregularity, VP Operations. Attached: Audio file, Webb Office, recording Z08, 12.mp3. Message: You might want to audit the marketing consultant payments from Q2, specifically the ones routed through subsidiary accounts controlled by Sterling Webb. Unless $24,000 in consulting fees paid to his mistress is standard operating procedure. I hit send. Then I drove to Home Depot and bought 100 pounds of rock salt, a pressure washer, and a case of bottled water. It was time to turn up the heat. The email hit the CEO's desk at 2:47 p.m. I know because I was in the ductwork above the executive suite when his assistant printed it out and walked it into his office. I heard him read it out loud, heard the confusion turn to anger, heard him pick up his phone and call Sterling. "My office, now." I climbed out of the ducts before things got interesting and headed back to sublevel 2. I had work to do. By 4 p.m., the gossip was circulating through the building like wildfire. The CEO had confronted Sterling. Sterling had denied everything. The CEO had pulled the accounting records. The numbers didn't lie. By 5 p.m., Audrey's phone was ringing off the hook. By 6 p.m., I was parked outside our house, watching her pull into the driveway in her Lexus. She'd been driving that car for 2 years, a lease she'd insisted we could afford. I'd been driving the same truck for 12. I waited until she was inside before I followed. She was standing in the living room, still in her work clothes, phone pressed to her ear. When she saw me, she held up one finger in that wait gesture I'd grown to hate. "I understand," she was saying into the phone. "Yes. I'll have my lawyer contact you. Goodbye." She lowered the phone and looked at me. "I'm suspended," she said, "pending investigation." "Investigation into what?" "You know what." I walked past her into the kitchen and grabbed a beer from the fridge. "No idea what you're talking about. Sterling's being audited. They think he embezzled money." She followed me, her heels clicking on the tile. "They think I was involved." "Were you?" Her face went red. "How can you even ask me that?" "Pretty easily, actually." I twisted the cap off the beer. "Were you involved, Audrey? He was helping me. I needed a place to stay when we worked late, and a place to stay. I took a long drink. That's what we're calling it." Silence. "I want you to leave," she said finally. "Excuse me?" "Leave. Get out. I can't deal with you right now." I set the beer down carefully on the counter. "This is my house, Audrey. I bought it. My name's on the deed." "Our names. Community property. Funny thing about that." I opened the drawer next to the stove and pulled out a folder. "I refinanced it last year, remember? You signed the papers. What you didn't read was that I refinanced it solely in my name. You're not on the deed anymore." She stared at the papers I dropped on the counter. "You can't do that." "Already did. Lawyer said it was legal as long as you signed. Which you did without reading because you were too busy at your important job." "Yeah." I finished the beer. "But I'm the son of a who owns the house. So here's how this works. I'm going to pack up my stuff. And when I say my stuff, I mean everything I paid for. The couch, the TV, the appliances, all of it. That's insane. No, what's insane is sitting at table 49 while my wife plays footsie with her boss at table 1. She opened her mouth, closed it. "You left before we could explain." "Explain what? That you're Sterling? That he's paying for your apartment? That you two are embezzling company money?" I pulled out my phone and played the recording. Our voices echoed through the kitchen, hers and Sterling's, talking about the apartment, the money, the plan. Audrey went pale. "You recorded us?" "The vents have ears." "That's illegal." "No, it's not. I was performing routine maintenance in a commercial space. What I heard in the process is admissible. I checked with a lawyer." I hadn't, but she didn't need to know that. She grabbed her phone. "I'm calling Sterling." "Go ahead." She dialed. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. She tried again. Same result. "He's not picking up," she said. "Probably busy explaining to the CEO why he stole $100,000 from the company." "It wasn't $100,000. "Close enough." I grabbed my keys from the hook by the door. "I'll be back tomorrow with a truck. Don't touch my stuff." "Where are you going?" "Somewhere that doesn't smell like Chanel and betrayal." I walked out, got in my van, and drove exactly 6 blocks before Sterling's BMW cut me off, forcing me to brake hard. He got out of the car and stormed toward me. His tie was gone, his shirt untucked, and he looked like a man who'd just watched his career implode. "This is your fault," he shouted. "You sent that email." I put the van in park and got out slowly. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Bullshit. You're sabotaging me because you're jealous." Jealous. I laughed. Of what? Your embezzlement charge? Your impending divorce from the CEO's daughter? Or just the general fact that you're unemployed? He swung at me. I saw it coming from a mile away. He telegraphed the punch like a drunk at a Little League game. I sidestepped, and his fist hit the side mirror of my van, shattering it. He howled, clutching his hand. That's $700, I said. You gonna pay for that? He charged me instead, shoulder down like a linebacker. I let him hit me, absorbing the impact. Then I grabbed his collar and shoved him backward into the hood of his BMW. He landed hard, gasping. Listen to me carefully, I said, leaning over him. I don't care what you and Audrey did. I don't care about your money or your job or your daddy's company. What I care about is that you humiliated me. You made me sit at table 49 while you sat at my place. You took what was mine and you laughed about it. She wanted me, he gasped, not you. Maybe. I stepped back. But here's the thing, Sterling. You need me. This heat wave, it's going to last another week, maybe 2. And every office building in this city is going to have HVAC failures. You know who fixes those? I tapped my chest. Guys like me, the ones you call chief and buddy, the ones who crawl through the ducts and keep your servers cool and make sure your precious office stays at 72 degrees. I got back in my van. Sterling pushed himself off the hood, still clutching his hand. You're crazy, he said. No. I put the van in reverse. I'm just done being invisible. I backed up 10 feet, then shifted into drive. Sterling's BMW was still blocking the road, parked at an angle with the driver's door open. I accelerated. Wait! Sterling jumped out of the way. My van's brush guard, a heavy steel frame I'd installed for winter plowing, caught the BMW's front bumper and crumpled it like tinfoil. The car spun sideways, tires screeching, and slammed into a parked sedan across the street. I didn't stop. I drove past the wreckage, past Sterling screaming on the sidewalk, past Audrey's Lexus pulling up behind me with her horn blaring. In my rearview mirror, I saw them both standing in the street, staring at the destroyed BMW. I turned on the radio. AC/DC was playing Highway to Hell. Perfect. I drove to a motel on the edge of town, checked in with cash, and called the power company. Hi, this is Elias Vance at 428 Parkside Drive. I need to disconnect service to that address effective immediately. I'm moving. Certainly, sir. We can have that done by tomorrow morning. How about tonight? We don't typically... I'll pay the emergency fee. Well, in that case, yes. We can have someone out there within 2 hours. Perfect. I hung up and lay back on the motel bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling. The heat wave outside was historic. Inside, I felt cold. Finally. The next 3 days were a beautiful disaster. The CEO suspended Sterling pending the investigation. Audrey was placed on administrative leave. The local news picked up the story because Sterling's father-in-law, the founder of Pinnacle, had made the mistake of trying to spin it as a misunderstanding, which only made the reporters dig deeper. By day 3, the heat wave had become a crisis. Rolling blackouts hit the city. Hospitals were on backup generators. The mayor issued a state of emergency, and every HVAC system in the metropolitan area was failing under the strain, including Pinnacle Tower. I got the call at 6 a.m. on Thursday morning. Mr. Vance, this is Patricia from Pinnacle Corporation. We have an emergency situation with our server room cooling system. The CEO has personally requested your immediate assistance. What's the rate? I'm sorry? My rate, for emergency service during a heat crisis. It's 10 times my normal hourly. Silence on the line. Mr. Vance, that's $5,000. Cash, up front. I'll have to get authorization. You do that. In the meantime, tell the CEO that his servers are currently running at 115 degrees. At 120, they start failing. At 130, they melt. He's got about 40 minutes. I hung up. They called back in 6 minutes. We accept your terms. Can you be here in 30 minutes? I can be there in 15. I was there in 20, deliberately slow. I wanted them sweating. Eddie met me at the security desk, looking frazzled. "Thank God you're here. The server room's going critical." "Where's the CEO?" "Upstairs, 29th floor. He wants to speak with you first." "No." Eddie blinked. "I'm sorry? I'm not here to chat. I'm here to fix servers. Point me to sub-level 2. He insisted. "Eddie, I like you, but I don't work for the CEO. I work for my company, and right now my company charges $5,000 for emergency service. That buys technical expertise, not a coffee meeting." I walked past him to the elevator. The server room was on sub-level 2, behind a secured door that required a keycard I no longer had. But I knew the override code, had programmed it myself when I installed the environmental controls 2 years ago. I punched in the code, and the door clicked open. The heat hit me like a physical wall. The server room was normally kept at a steady 68 degrees, cold enough to preserve the delicate electronics that ran the company's entire operation. Now it was easily over 100 degrees, and the cooling fans were screaming like jet engines trying to compensate. The rows of server racks stretched 30 feet deep, blinking lights and humming processors. Each rack was worth 6 figures. All told, the room contained about $40 million in equipment, all of it cooking. I walked to the environmental control panel and checked the diagnostics. The main chiller had failed, a compressor burnout caused by running non-stop for 72 hours in 108-degree weather. The backup system had kicked in, but couldn't keep pace with the heat load. Behind me, the door opened. Sterling walked in, followed by Audrey. "Fix it," Sterling said. I turned slowly. "You don't work here anymore. I'm consulting. Now fix the goddamn servers before the company loses everything." "Where's my money?" Audrey stepped forward, holding an envelope. "It's here. 5,000, cash." I took it, counted it slowly while they waited. All hundreds. All real. "Thank you," I said. Then I turned back to the control panel. "How long will this take?" Sterling asked. "Depends. Could be 20 minutes, could be 2 hours. "We don't have 2 hours. Then I guess you'd better let me work." They didn't leave. They stood there watching as I opened the panel and started rewiring the backup connections. The heat was suffocating. I was sweating through my shirt within 5 minutes. "This is your fault," Sterling said. "You sabotaged the system." "The system failed because it's running in a 108-degree heat wave," I said, not looking up. "Not my fault Mother Nature doesn't like you. You turned off the cooling in my office. Don't deny it." "I adjusted the temperature to conserve energy during peak load times. Standard procedure." "Bullshit." I straightened up and faced him. "You want to file a complaint? Go ahead. Tell the CEO that you're mad because I made your office too hot while the entire building was on the verge of collapse. See how that plays." Audrey grabbed Sterling's arm. "Let him work." He shook her off, but didn't say anything else. I went back to the panel, finished the rewiring, and flipped the backup chiller to manual override. The fans ramped up, and cold air started flowing through the server room vents. "Done," I said. "That'll hold you until you can get a permanent replacement." "How long?" Sterling asked. 3 days, maybe 4. After that, you'll need a new compressor unit. Good luck getting one in this heat. Can you get one? Yeah. How much? 40,000, plus installation. Sterling's face went purple. That's highway robbery. That's supply and demand. I closed the panel and grabbed my tool bag. You want the part or not? We'll use another company. Good luck. I started toward the door. Wait. Audrey's voice stopped me. Eli, please, we need this. I turned. She looked smaller somehow, standing there in the server room with sweat matting her hair. The polished executive was gone. What remained was just Audrey, desperate and scared. You embarrassed me at the gala, I said quietly. I know. You cheated on me, with him. I nodded at Sterling. You let him pay for an apartment with embezzled money. You were going to leave me and pretend it was my fault. She didn't deny it. I'm sorry. Sorry you did it? Or sorry you got caught? She didn't answer. I looked at Sterling. The chiller room's on sub-level 3, right below us. There's a containment aisle for high-security servers. You know it? He nodded warily. Go check the pressure valve on the main coolant line. I think there's a leak. I'm not a technician. Then learn or don't, I don't care. I walked to the door. Wait! Sterling moved fast, positioning himself between me and the exit. What pressure valve? Where exactly? I smiled. Containment aisle C. The access door's the red one. Code is 4739. Sterling pulled out his phone and typed it in. And the valve? Silver handle. Top of the main coolant line, you'll see it. He looked at Audrey. Stay here. I'll be right back. He left. Audrey and I stood in the humming server room, 10 feet apart, with the cold air finally starting to lower the temperature. He's not going to find a leak, she said. I know. What did you do? I walked to the control panel and pulled up the building schematics on the screen. Containment aisle C was a sealed room within the chiller plant. 10 feet by 10 feet, reinforced concrete walls, magnetic locks on the door. It was designed to contain catastrophic coolant spills. Or people. I entered a command on the panel. On the screen, the door to containment aisle C showed green, open. Then I changed it to red, locked. Eli? Audrey's voice was small. He humiliated me, I said. Both of you did. You made me feel like nothing. What did you do? I entered another command. The cooling fans in containment aisle C shut off. The temperature inside that sealed room would start climbing immediately, slowly at first, then faster as the chiller equipment generated residual heat. He'll be fine, I said. For a while. Let him out. Why? Because I'm asking you to. I looked at her. Really looked. 8 years of marriage, gone. 8 years of coming home to her smile, her laugh, her presence. 8 years of building something that she'd dismantled in 6 months. You sat at table 1, I said. Eli. You put me at table 49, next to the kitchen, like I was baggage. I was wrong. Yeah, you were. I turned back to the control panel and pressed the building intercom button. The speaker crackled to life, connected to every office, every conference room, every public space in Pinnacle Tower. Good morning, Pinnacle employees, I said into the microphone. This is Elias Vance, HVAC specialist. I've been crawling through your air ducts for 4 years, and I've heard some interesting things. For example, did you know that Sterling Webb has been embezzling company funds to pay for an apartment for his mistress? Her name is Audrey Vance. Yeah, same last name as me. Small world. Audrey grabbed my arm. Stop. I gently pulled away and hit play on my phone. The recording played through the building speakers. Sterling's voice, Audrey's voice, discussing the apartment, the money, the plan. He's locked in containment aisle C right now. I continued into the microphone. Temperature in there's about 90 degrees. Should hit 100 in 20 minutes. Security code to release him is 4739 override C. Someone might want to help him out. I released the intercom button. Audrey was crying. Why are you doing this? Because you made me invisible, I said. And invisible men see everything. I walked out of the server room, leaving the door open behind me. Behind me, I heard Audrey running, heard her screaming for security, heard the building erupt into chaos. I took the stairs to the ground floor, walked past Eddie's empty security desk, and exited through the front doors into the August heat. My van was where I'd left it, parked in a loading zone with the engine running and the AC on full blast. I climbed inside, pulled out of the parking lot, and drove exactly 3 blocks before Sterling's repaired BMW screeched around the corner and T-boned me at the intersection. The crash was spectacular. Sterling's BMW hit my van's rear quarter panel, going at least 50 miles per hour, spinning me 180 degrees. My toolboxes flew forward and slammed into the back of my seat. Glass exploded. Metal shrieked. But the van stayed upright, and the brush guard took most of the impact. I shook my head to clear it, tasted from where I'd bitten my lip, and looked in the side mirror. Sterling was climbing out of the BMW, face purple with rage. Audrey was in the passenger seat, screaming something I couldn't hear through the ringing in my ears. I put the van in reverse, backed up 20 feet, then shifted into drive. Sterling saw what I was planning and ran. I accelerated, aiming for the BMW's exposed driver's side. My brush guard hit it perfectly, shoving the car sideways across the intersection. The BMW's tires screeched, and then it was airborne for a brief, beautiful moment before crashing into a parked delivery truck. I kept driving. In the rearview mirror, I saw Sterling getting to his feet, saw Audrey crawl out of the passenger side, stumbling, saw a crowd of people running toward the crash with their phones out, filming. I turned the corner and accelerated. My phone rang. I hit the speaker button without looking at the caller ID. Mr. Vance, this is Detective Sarah Klein with Metro Police. We need you to come in for questioning regarding an incident at Pinnacle Tower. I'm busy. Sir, this is not optional. You're wanted for questioning in an assault and unlawful imprisonment. Sterling came after me. Check the security footage. We have footage of you locking him in a sealed room and broadcasting private information over the building intercom. That's a crime, Mr. Vance. Is he okay? He's fine. Security released him after 4 minutes, but then he wasn't imprisoned. He was inconvenienced. I checked my mirrors. No police cars yet. Tell him to sue me. Mr. Vance. I hung up and threw the phone out the window. The heat was getting worse. The dashboard thermometer showed 111 degrees outside, and the traffic was gridlocked from people fleeing the city to find cooler temperatures. I maneuvered the van through side streets, heading toward the industrial district where the buildings were older and the streets were emptier. Behind me, I heard sirens. They were coming. I took a hard right into an alley, drove 50 yards, and parked behind a Chinese restaurant that had been closed for renovations. I grabbed my heavy tool bag from the back, the one with the wrenches, the pressure gauges, and the 2 canisters of R410A refrigerant I'd taken from the van's reserve supply. Each canister was the size of a fire extinguisher and filled with coolant under 300 psi of pressure. At room temperature, R410A was a liquid. Released into air, it expanded into a gas cold enough to cause instant frostbite. I'd never used it as a weapon before. There's a first time for everything. I climbed out of the van and ran deeper into the alley, away from the sirens. The heat was suffocating, reflecting off the brick walls and pavement. My shirt was soaked through. My hands were shaking from adrenaline. I reached the end of the alley and stopped. Sterling's BMW, what was left of it, was parked sideways across the street, blocking my exit. Sterling stood beside it, holding a tire iron. His shirt was torn, his face from the crash. Audrey stood behind him, phone to her ear, probably calling the police again. End of the line, Sterling said. You really want to do this? I asked. You locked me in a room. You humiliated me in front of the entire company. You destroyed my car. He hefted the tire iron. Yeah, I really want to do this. I set down the tool bag and pulled out the first refrigerant canister. Last chance to walk away. He charged. I opened the valve. The R410A exploded out of the canister in a white cloud of supercooled gas, hitting Sterling in the chest. He screamed and stumbled backward, dropping the tire iron. Frost crystallized on his shirt, his exposed skin turning red and raw from the cold. Jesus Christ! He fell to his knees, clutching his chest. I released the valve and looked at Audrey. Call an ambulance. He needs medical attention. She stood frozen, phone in her hand. Call it, I shouted. She dialed, hands shaking. I walked past Sterling, who was gasping on the pavement, and stopped in front of the BMW. The front end was destroyed, the hood crumpled, the windshield spider-webbed with cracks. I pulled out the second refrigerant canister and sprayed it across the engine block. The metal groaned and contracted, and something inside cracked with a sound like a gunshot. The residual heat from the engine met the supercooled refrigerant, and steam erupted from under the hood. Behind me, sirens were getting closer. "Eli!" Audrey's voice was hoarse. "Stop!" I turned. She was kneeling beside Sterling, who was breathing but barely conscious. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "You know why." "Because of the gala? Because of one stupid night? Because you made me nothing." I walked toward her slowly. "You climbed the ladder and pretended I didn't exist. You let him pay for your apartment with stolen money. You sat at table 1 and left me with the dishwashers. I'm sorry. You're sorry you got caught." I stopped 5 feet away. "If I hadn't found out, you'd still be doing it. You'd still be laughing about me with Sterling. You'd still be planning your exit." She didn't deny it. A police car screeched around the corner, lights flashing. 2 officers jumped out, guns drawn. "Drop the canister, hands up." I set the refrigerant on the ground and raised my hands. "Elias Vance," one officer called. "That's me." They approached carefully, one cuffing me while the other checked on Sterling. "He needs an ambulance," I said. "Chemical burn, coolant exposure. It's already on the way." They walked me to the patrol car and put me in the back seat. Through the window, I watched Audrey crying over Sterling, watched the paramedics arrive and load him onto a stretcher, watched the crowd of onlookers with their phones out, recording everything. The officer in the driver's seat turned to face me. "You're under arrest for assault, destruction of property, and unlawful use of a hazardous material. You have the right to remain silent." I know my rights. He continued reading them anyway. When he finished, I leaned back in the seat and closed my eyes. The patrol car's AC was running full blast, and for the first time in days, I felt cold. "Why'd you do it?" the officer asked. "He took something from me," I said. "I wanted it back." "Did you get it back?" I thought about Audrey crying on the pavement, about Sterling's burned chest and destroyed car, about the entire Pinnacle Corporation hearing exactly who they were and what they'd done. "Yeah," I said. "I did." They drove me to the precinct, booked me, and put me in a holding cell with 3 other guys who'd been arrested during the heatwave, one for fighting over a parking space, one for stealing from a 7-Eleven, one for public intoxication. I sat on the concrete bench and stared at the wall. At 9 p.m., a guard came and unlocked the cell. "You made bail." "I didn't call anyone." "Someone called for you." I followed him to the front desk, where Eddie from Pinnacle Tower was waiting with the bail paperwork. "Eddie?" "CEO sent me," he said. "Said to tell you the charges are being dropped." "Why?" "Because Sterling, Webb, and Audrey Vance have bigger problems. The SEC started an investigation this afternoon. Turns out embezzling company funds is a federal crime. The CEO wants this whole thing to go away quietly." "So I'm free? As a bird?" Eddie handed me my wallet and keys. "Your van's been impounded, but I can give you a ride." We walked out into the night. The heat had finally broken. The temperature had dropped to a balmy 95 degrees, and actual clouds were forming on the horizon. "Rain tomorrow," Eddie said, looking up. "About time." I got my van back from the impound. The passenger side was crushed, but it ran. Back at the motel, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. "You destroyed my life." Then another. "The CEO fired me. Sterling is facing charges." I replied, "You did that yourself." She wrote, "I hope you're happy." I typed, "I'm not happy, but I'm not invisible either." The rain hit at 3 a.m., finally breaking the heat wave. By morning, the city was washed clean. I drove to the storage unit. I didn't need the evidence anymore. A news alert hit my phone. Pinnacle VP arrested. Sterling's mugshot stared back at me. Audrey was listed as a co-conspirator. I went to the Pinnacle Tower one last time, sub-level 2. I could have shut the whole building down. Instead, I ran diagnostics and optimized the system. I did my job. Eddie met me at the loading dock with a check for $50,000 and an NDA. "Severance pay," he said. The CEO wants silence. I signed the paper. Sterling was a problem, Eddie said. And Audrey? Resigned this morning. I climbed into the van and headed west. My phone buzzed again. Audrey, can we talk? I pulled over. I typed, nothing left to say. She replied, I loved you. Once. I typed back, table 49, Audrey. That's where we ended. I threw the phone out the window into a ditch. I looked in the rearview mirror. I looked tired, but I looked real. I pressed the accelerator. The road stretched out ahead, empty and clean. I followed it.